Howdy, I'm Cord Campbell, founder of StackGeek. This video will walk you through getting started with Openstack by creating a new project to be used for development. We'll launch a couple of instances and install Apache in the process. This video guide assumes that you've already installed Openstack on at least a single node. If you haven't installed Openstack yet, hop over to our tutorial pages and read the Install Openstack on Ubuntu guide. There's also a video guide for the installation process. Keep in mind this demo is done using a single node deployment of Openstack, but it could also be done using a multi-node deployment. We'll start our demo by logging into our Openstack dashboard. The install process will have prompted you for a password, which we'll use now to log in as the admin user. Openstack allows you to isolate users, instances, and volumes from each other using projects. You could create a project for an individual developer or for a development team. To create a new project, navigate to the Admin tab and then click on Projects. Click on Create New Project and enter a name and description for the project. In this example, we will use the name Development. Click on the Create Project button at the bottom to create the project. Now let's create a new user. Click on Users, and then click on Create User. We'll select the project that we created just a second ago, and click on Create User. Now let's go back to the project page briefly and assign another user to the project. Click on the pull-down next to the project, and select Modify Users. Select the user that you would like to add to the project, and click on the Add to Project button. You'll want to pick a role for the user. In this case, we're going to make this user an admin, and then click on Add. For development work, our developers need about 2 VPUs, 1 GB of RAM, and 5 GB of main disk for their instances. Let's create a new flavor for them by clicking on Flavors and Create Flavor. We'll name this M2 Medium, give it 2 VPUs, a gig of RAM, and 5 GB of root disk and 1 GB of ephemeral disk. Click on Create Flavor to save the flavor. Now we'll log out and log back in as the new user. The new user won't be able to see other project instances or volumes, but they'll be able to switch between the various projects for which they are a member. Before we launch an instance, we'll need to create a developer key which Openstack can use for authenticating SSH. Click on Access and Security and then click on Create Key Pair. The private key portion will be downloaded locally when you click on Create Key Pair. We'll come back and use that here in a minute when we log into the instance. To launch an instance, we'll click on Instances and Volumes and then Launch Instance. For this demo, I'm only using a single image of Ubuntu 12.04 LTS. But if you add other images with Glance, Openstack's image manager, you'll see them here. Click on Launch and then name the instance. We'll also tell the instance to install Apache while it's booting. We'll do that by writing a small bash script in the user data field. Pick the flavor that you created earlier and the key pair for the user, and then click on Launch Instance. We need a public IP address for this instance, and the instance will need to allow SSH and web traffic into it. Click on Access and Security again, and then click on Allocate IP to Project. Select the default image pool and click on Allocate IP. Click on Associate IP to assign it to the instance that you started earlier. Click on Edit Rules to add a firewall rule to the instance's security group. We'll add port 22 and 80 for SSH and Apache. Let's take a look at our instance now and see where it's at with booting. Click on Instances and Volumes again, and then click on the instance name to see the details of the box. Click on the Log tab at the top to view the boot log. The log view updates every few seconds, so just wait until you see the SSH host key printout before trying to log into the instance. Now let's create a new permanent volume. This volume can be moved between the instances as they are started and terminated. Now let's assign the volume we created to the instance we launched earlier. Moving over to a terminal, we'll want to move our key into our SSH directory and then change the permissions on it to be private. We'll then use the SSH key to log into the new box with its public IP address. Now we're logged into the instance, we can view a process list. Apache is running because we installed it at boot time, so we should be able to go over and view the new site the box is hosting. Let's go ahead and move the web directory over to the new volume we created so any changes we make to it are preserved across instance, termination, and starts. We'll create a partition using fdisk and then format it with ext3. Now let's move the directory over and create a link to the new directory on the permanent disk. Finally, let's check our content is still being served. And it is. If we want, we can now terminate this box and launch a new box with different packages, or even snapshot this box and volume so other users can use it for further development. These snapshots can eventually be used for launching production instances by other projects.